All right, here we go. Hello. Hello, everyone in the chat. Oh my gosh, my sweater is like, what is happening today? It's humid, it's muggy. I don't know what's going on. Greetings, all. Let me just make sure everything is set up and ready to go. Just want to do one check real quick. Do, 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 do. Just going to check this really quick. Hello. I'm just making sure I'm up and going. Yeah. 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 Hello, guys. Please excuse my hair today. It is humid. It's muggy. I can't. I won't. I'm not. Just one of those days when I was like, I'm not even going to try with my hair. I'm just not. Greetings. Hello, Eric. How are you? What's going on, Danny? Hello. Hey, Jonathan. I think I saw you the other day on a chat. What's going on, Eric? By the way, guys, this is my new time now on FHL for Friday is 5:30 because now that we're back in the office, it's like crazy. I miss like just being able to work from home. Hey, Matt, what's going on? How are you? Welcome all. All right, I'm just gonna check Quitter. I'm gonna check Twitter really quick to make sure I'm up and going on there as well. Cools. All right, I am. Oh my God, it's so humid, you guys. I can't. Ugh. I don't know about you guys, but I LOL quitter. Yeah, I know. Maybe that's what we should call it, quitter. What's going on, David? Sabarama. Whoa. Oh, my camera's up a little too high. Man, today has been a crazy day, man. It's Friday. No, Jimmy Dore's Garage. They said Sabby stole my Starbucks coffee. I don't drink coffee. I drink tea. So that wouldn't be me. That would be someone else for real. Hey, Brett, what's going on? All right. Greetings, Andrew. Hey, hello. All right, all right, all right. So let's go ahead and get started. Do want to tell you guys, don't forget to join me at 7 o'clock tonight. I have on my channel, it'll be JB from FHL, Rob from Political Fight Club. Some of you guys may be familiar with him, and Steve from Real Progressives. And we're going to talk about elections, activism, and podcasters, and how we can all find a way to come together, solutions moving forward, as well as addressing some issues that need to be addressed. I think David said they said Sabby yelled at me. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Oh no! Hello, Radical Leftist Agenda. How are you? Oh boy, the comments. All right, so I don't want to keep you guys waiting. Let's go ahead and get started. So, today, like, we're going to talk about racism in real estate. And this is something I've been wanting to discuss on here for a while. Wanted to get my videos, my clips and stuff going. It is very important that we talk about this because it happens. And what I'm going to talk about today with racism in real estate is not just home ownership. It's not just when you're going to buy a house, but also in renting as well. And I think that these are some of the things that are important for people to know. So, the first thing that I want to show you, I'm going to show you some stats here. Let me just share my screen because this is quite alarming when you see this. Share my screen. Where's my picture? Oh, let me put my picture up and go to share. All right. So I just want to show you guys some stats here about racism in real estate. This should be pretty interesting. So check this out. Now, this was a survey. It says people of color are more likely to experience discrimination when trying to rent or buy housing. These are the statistics here. Likelihood of experiencing racial discrimination when trying to rent or buy housing by race/ethnicity. And this is from 2017. It's probably, these numbers have probably increased since then. But for white people, it's 5% of white people are more likely to experience discrimination. For African Americans, look at this, you guys. 45% of African Americans are more likely to experience discrimination when trying to rent or buy a house. For Asian Americans, it's 25%. For Latino Americans, it's 31%. And for Native Americans, it's 17%. But what I want you to notice is the significant difference for African Americans versus everybody else on this list. 45% is huge. That's almost half. And this source here is from Harvard Chan School of Public Health. Just letting you know where I got my source from. I like to do that so people are like, hey, where'd you get that data from? So that is where that is coming from. Those numbers to me are pretty alarming, pretty alarming. I'm going to show you, let me stop sharing my screen. I'm going to show you a clip from a video that talks a little bit more about this and how this actually happens. So while I get that ready, let me go ahead and cue up that video. It's a video about housing discrimination. And this is queued at 28 seconds. So I'm going to just put it at that spot. So this is called Exposing Housing Discrimination, a conversation with Marge Turner and Justin Carter. I like when people lay out graphics and they actually show pictures of what they're talking about. So that, like, I love that with this video right away. I was like, oh, snap, I'm gonna have to show this to everybody because I just love seeing that. So let me go ahead and turn up my volume and I'm going to share my screen. And then I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. But I want you to pay close attention to what she shows you here about housing discrimination in this country. So let me share my screen. Share audio. Make it larger. All right. And let me just mute my mic.
In order to know just how big a problem housing discrimination is, the Department of Housing and Urban Development uses a measurement method that's called paired testing. In each test, two people, one white and one minority, call and then visit an apartment complex or a real estate agent's office and inquire about a house or apartment that was just advertised recently. And they make the same requests, and they describe themselves as having the same income, the same assets, and the same employment. So from the perspective of the landlord or the real estate agent, they really are completely comparable customers. The only difference between them is their race or ethnicity. And if over hundreds of tests, we see that the whites are shown more units, told about more units, that's solid evidence of discrimination. And if our work can rigorously and responsibly measure how often that's happening, we can contribute to progress towards eliminating that unfairness. So our new study results find that both the white customer and the minority customer are treated politely. They get to come and have an appointment. And they find out about some units. But when you compare their treatment, you discover the whites saw more units or was told about more units. So what's troubling about this kind of discrimination is how hard it is to detect.
So the type of discrimination, notice that she said it's hard to detect it because on the surface level, it looks like when white people and black people go to see an apartment or a house, they're treated, sincere, politely. But where the discrimination comes in most of the time is it's more hidden, it's more like covert racism. So it's the number of units that are shown to them, the type of units that are shown to them, the neighborhoods that those units and those houses are in and where they're allowed to go look for their search. That is very important. And I can tell you about my own personal experience with this. When I graduated from college and I was trying to get my first, like, I guess you would call it big girl apartment. I don't know. You guys know what I'm talking about. Your first real apartment, not the one where you had like roommates and stuff like that. There was one apartment complex that I went to look at, and I met all the requirements. I had the credit score, I had the monthly income that was required to rent there, and there was just something about the property manager. She was the one that was showing the apartments. There was something about her that just rubbed me the wrong way. She didn't seem thrilled to have me there. And when I asked to see a unit, she was coming up with these excuses as like, well, I mean, I only have one that I can show. And I was like, yeah, that works. That's fine. She's like, well, it's going to be a couple minutes. I was like, yeah, that's fine. I have the rest of the day. Her hesitance to show me that unit really just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Um, I also didn't really see any other black people like in the office, around the apartment complex. But the reason why I was looking there is because it was close to my job. And that way I wouldn't have to deal with the long commute. So she takes me to show me the apartment, and I walk in and she's like, this is our 1 bedroom model. And I was like, okay, cool. She didn't say anything about the apartment. Like I did all the talking. And usually like those people, the property managers, people who are trying to rent these spaces, they're trying to sell you on this. They're usually talking and telling you about the apartment, telling you about the unit. She didn't tell me anything. I walked into the kitchen. I asked her about the appliances. Does this come with? Walked into the bedroom, asked her about all these different questions. And mainly all she did was just stand there. And she had her arms crossed the entire time. So I could tell that she was very, very uncomfortable. And I didn't end up renting that apartment. But I want to tell you something funny about that. I ended up renting a different apartment. But like a week later, I got a phone call from that apartment complex. It wasn't her, it was someone else. And they were asking about my experience, asking if I could do a survey. And I was like, sure, why not? So I did the survey and I told her what happened when I went to go see the apartment. And she said, I want to apologize to you. That is not the way that we conduct business here. Can you tell me who showed you the apartment? I told her the woman's name. I don't know what happened to that woman or whatever. But I thought that it was important that I let them know that this is how a black person was treated when they came to look at your apartment complex. So that was really it was really eye opening for me. I was surprised they even called me to do a survey, but I guess, some places do those things. But it was important that I got that message out. And if that happens to you, it's important that you get that message out as well, because that should not be allowed regardless. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. Jimmy Dore's Garage said, LOL, she stood there. Yeah, it was the weirdest thing. Like she just stood there like this and she was just staring at me the whole time. I'm like, dude, what is your problem? Like, really? Um, Thomas said the housing racism facing natives has decreased as more natives buy property and land or move back to the reservations with economic growth. Those poor living in the cities still face housing racism. Thank you for that, Thomas. That is really important to know. And I'm glad you mentioned the cities because there are a lot of there's a lot of housing discrimination in the cities right here in Boston, DC, San Francisco, Minneapolis. Like that's actually not uncommon. Andrew said, did you say where it was? Say where what was? You talking about me? Oh, did I say where it was? That was in Columbia, South Carolina. I no longer live there. But oh man, if you want to talk about a place with a lot of racism. Don't even get me started. That's a whole nother show. Deborah said, I'm looking for apartments right now and not looking forward to it. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. This is something that, like, as Black people, that we have to deal with, that we have to go through. And I want to tell you this: when I went to look at that apartment, I made sure that I was dressed up, so to speak. I didn't show up with like jeans. Like, I was dressed professionally the same way I was like at my job, because as a Black person going in, anytime you're going to go look at real estate, whether it's like rentals, whatever, there's already a stigma against you. There's already that preconceived notion that, oh God, like they may not have the money to live here. They may not be able to afford it. There's already that bias. And so I thought that by going there from my job, and I was already dressed up, that this would show them like, hey, I do have a real job and I can afford to stay here, even though they had all of like my, my paycheck information and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, sometimes no matter how, professional you look or professional you are, you still receive that bias as African American. And that's important for people to know. Harry, I don't know where you live. You have to remind me. Whoa, I can't believe that people actually care about other people's skin tone as if melanin makes a difference to who somebody is. Unbelievable. This species is so juvenile. Oh, Harry, come to America. I think you're abroad. Come to America. For real. There's a lot of it. Eric said, I got lucky because my aunt on my dad's side just so happens to stay in the apartment complex. Yeah, it definitely does help when you already have somebody there that's like family, that can vouch for you. Rayborn said affordable housing in the United States is just living under a bridge. Wow. Yeah, it's really interesting. I can tell you another example as well. When I moved to New York City, I lived in Brooklyn. I lived over there by the avenues. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Brooklyn, but there's a section called Midwood, and that's where like all the avenues are. Avenue A, B, C goes through the alphabet. And when I was looking for an apartment in New York, my dad was with me. The amount of shutdowns that we got first upon sight just by looking at us was unreal. And you wouldn't think that would happen in a place like New York City that is very diverse population. And I had the money to pay because I saved up my money. I worked my butt off all summer, like waitressing tables, and I had the money to pay. And there were all these excuses. And this is a common one that sometimes like Black people will face when we go to rent or when we go to, buy a house. We don't have anything available, even though they do. Cory Booker faced this. Cory Booker talked about how his parents, when they were trying to buy a house, at that point in time, I believe it was a majority like white neighborhood. The real estate agent told them that there were no houses available. So they did a test where they sent in their white friend to ask for the same request. And all of a sudden, there were all these houses available. So his parents' friend bought the house for them. And then when it came time to like get the keys for the house, Cory Booker's parents showed up and grabbed the keys, and the real estate agent tried to punch his dad. This happens. Now, I know that was a long time ago, but it still happens today where real estate agents will come up with excuses to not rent to you or to not sell you houses, or they'll only show you houses in Black areas. If you try to get a house in a predominantly white area, they may come up with excuses that that's not available, or someone's already, or it's under contract when it's not under contract. You have to watch out for these things. Thomas said redlining and housing discrimination is more felt among Black and Latinos. They need updated civil rights laws to combat redlining and housing racism. I know I said housing racism, and more government investments, home/land ownership. Yes, redlining is a huge problem. And that started like years ago, but it's still going on. And there's this common notion that if Black people move into your neighborhood, then the property of your home automatically drops. And that's sad. I cannot pronounce your name, but thank you for the comment. Shy Free said NYC is disgustingly racist. Yes, absolutely. And it's funny because, like I said, you wouldn't think that a place that is so diverse, you have people from all over the world that live in New York City, but there's a lot of racism there. And it's not just covert racism, there's overt racism there too, as well. Eric said, I'll bet money NYC ain't got nothing on the South when it comes to racism, to radical leftist agenda. Uh, I used to think that too. I lived in the South and I lived in New York City, and the level of racism was still there. It's just done in different ways. Like with the housing discrimination, that's a big one. That's a big one in New York. Deborah said, I'm in San Antonio, Texas, and they think $1,000 rent is affordable housing if you are single and make less than $34,000 a year. The person on the phone didn't ask if I was looking for affordable housing. Wasted time. $1,000 a month is still expensive. It's so funny when people will tell you, like, dude, it's only $1,000 a month. I'm like, what? Andrew said rent control would be a good topic to dive into at some point. Not that that would fix redlining or racism. Yes, and there was a time when we used to have rent control here in Boston, and they did away with it. I don't know why, but they did away with it. And when Marty Walsh ran for his second term, that was one of the questions that came up in his debate against Tito Jackson was, why don't you bring back rent control? And his response was, we can't bring it back. He didn't really say why. He was just like, we can't bring it back. Narissa said, I wish everyone would research the red lines in their cities. You will learn so much. Yeah, that is something good to look up to. I think my camera just went out of focus. Am I back? Okay. Um, I think I'm still a little fuzzy. Camera, you need to focus. Hello. Okay, I'm back. Um, yeah. It's just crazy. Shauna's opinion said capitalism took control. Absolutely. The video clip that I'm going to show you talks about another form of housing discrimination that doesn't involve purchasing a home or renting an apartment. It involves appraisals. And this is another one where Black people are more likely to face discrimination when it comes to getting an appraisal of your house. So I'm going to go ahead and put this video up because I remember seeing this when this special aired on television, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like it was painful to watch. But I'm going to go ahead and set up this clip for you. Oh, thanks so much for the super chat. What's left news and analysis with Jay Snow. I don't know why I can talk today. And a lot of these realtors and salespeople in general will swear, some even believe it, that they aren't racist, but just don't want to waste time. Exactly. Exactly. Always watch that too, by the way. When people make those comments, I'm not racist, but you might be racist. I'm just telling you off. It's just like, oh my gosh. Oh, where did you go? Quaker Socialist said Boston recent research showed the city is highly racist. Housing and rent is associated with racism. Boston discriminates by race in housing. Landlords and developers own Greater Boston. That is very true. That is very true. Because when I first moved here and I was looking for an apartment, it was interesting how many people were trying to direct me to, oh, you should go to you should look in Dorchester, you should look in Roxbury. And I was like, I need to be somewhere that's kind of close to like school, like grad school. Oh, I'm like, yeah. And they would automatically direct me to the Black neighborhoods. Like that's where they wanted me to be without saying, we want you to be in the Black neighborhood. That was their way of kind of, it was like a racist dog whistle in a way. Like, yeah, you should look in Roxbury or Dorchester, even though that was nowhere near where I needed to be for work and for school. That was just interesting to me. So I'm going to show you this video about racism with home ownership uh, appraisals. And I'm going to set this up for you. I want to tell you about this first really quick, just to give you a heads up. Let me go ahead and share my screen. This story is especially powerful. Some of you may have heard this, may have seen this, I don't know. But I remember when I saw it on TV. So to set this up for you, this woman and her husband, they're an interracial couple. She's Black, he's white. They asked for an appraisal on their house. That's going to set up the story for you. They were asking for an appraisal on their home. The appraisal came back incredibly low, and they knew that it was low. So they did something to ensure that they would get the correct appraisal for their house. And it's really hurtful. It's really heartbreaking when you see this, but I'm going to mute my mic and I'm going to play this video.
Her name is Abina Horton. She is a labor and employment attorney. And this is her husband, Alex Horton, an artist. Last June, they set out to get an appraisal of their home in Jacksonville, Florida, hoping to refinance and pay down the mortgage. A home filled with books and photos and love. Her family, his family. But when the appraiser came, Abina was there and said she felt something unsettling.
It clicked in my mind almost immediately that I understand what the issue was here. Why did I let myself forget that I live in America as a Black person and that I need to take some extra steps to get a fair result?
The appraisal comes back. It is shockingly low. Even the bank couldn't make sense of that number. Coming out of the first appraisal, was it rage? Was it exhaustion?
It was exhaustion, I would say. This person is being so petty and hateful, and he's wasting my time.
So she decided to get a second appraisal with a new appraiser. Same house, but something different.
Hey, it's Abina again, and back with another edition of the things that we are taking down from our walls.
There are a few things in my house that are demonstrably Black. So clearly the pictures that we have all over the house with all of our family members, with my grandmother getting married back in the 40s.
We have the picture of Charlie Bolden, who's an African-American astronaut, pictures of me when I was a baby, Black Panther.
We both put away pictures, and it's like, these are people I love. These are people I care about, and I need to hide them. That was very tough.
And then, of course, the primary thing that we did was remove both me and my son from the home during the second appraisal.
But when you're doing this, what does that do to the spirit?
It's crushing the spirit, of course. I'm ashamed of it. I'll be honest. I'm ashamed of the fact that my son will see that this is something that I did. I'm ashamed to say that I really wanted to refinance and pay off my house sooner and have full equity in my home. And so I was willing to put up with that indignity to do it because I knew it was going to be effective. So it was a combination of pragmatism and deep and profound sadness doing that.
She took down all the photos of her family, replacing them only with photos of her husband and his white family. And he is the person in the home when the new appraiser comes. And when the second appraisal comes back, the value of their house has shot up more than $100,000, a 40% increase.
It was primarily financial relief. I'm just glad that we're going to get the rate that we want. And then I think it was about 15 seconds later when the tears came, because we realize just how much more removing that variable increased the value of our home.
So the first time I saw that, that was really hard to watch. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. No one should have to remove pictures in their home so that they can get the proper appraisal that they're supposed to get for their home. But this kind of thing happens. That story that I just played for you, that is not uncommon for Black people in this country. And let me tell you what that really says, the message that that sends. When you give them a higher appraisal, once the Black person was basically removed from the home, you know what that says? That sends the message that white people are worth more. Yes, Harry, I agree. I agree. It's very sad. That's the kind of message that you're sending to people. Greg said the appraisal process is very smoke and mirrors. Absolutely. And you know what's sad? I was just thinking about this. Let's pretend her husband wasn't white. Let's pretend her husband was Black. They would have never received the proper appraisal for that home. Because what were they going to do? Remove him too? That's the real estate market in this country. That's real estate. That's what happens to Black people in this country with real estate. You can't even get the correct appraisal for your house because of the color of your skin. It's almost like they had to tell a lie. They had to create this made up story. Like he went from being a married man to a single man who just had pictures up in his house of his family, his, parents and his grandparents, and not his wife. Isn't that ridiculous? All because they saw a Black face in the house on the wall. Dan O'Neill says, busted. Absolutely. Jimmy Doors Garage says, I wonder if the same also applies to immigrants. That's a good question. I haven't looked into that, but that would be worth looking into as well. Greg said, this is an example of where the class over race argument breaks down. Let's talk about that. Because a lot of times when I try to bring up like race, people want to, bring up class as well. And I understand that race and class can intersect. Absolutely. But in this example in particular that I showed you in that video, that had zero to do with class. And that had 100% to do with race. That was 100% racial. Very sad. Very sad. Shauna said there is a similar story out of Indiana. Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, that story is not uncommon. And I know this because I've researched this heavily before, like my husband and I started looking for houses, like before we started this whole house shopping thing. And I did a lot of research about this. So I knew that their story was not an outlier. All bull aside said it's not really that they had to hide aspects of themselves. It's the reason they had to. Pictures of Satan or babes or even weed, drug paraphernalia, they would probably have to come down. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that too, but still, the fact that it was accepted that the white image in the home was worth more than the Black images in that house. And that's the point that I really want to get across. Deborah said, my white friend has offered to get Airbnbs for me when I get rejected. If they don't want my money, they don't get it. Mm-mm-mm. Very sad. Very sad. Harry said, I wonder, is there a difference in such experiences of mixed race couples depending on which partner is Black? So that's an interesting question, Harry, because there's another story, and you can look this one up on YouTube as well, where it's a Black man and his wife is Latina. And the same thing happened to them. So that's two different examples. One where you have it's a Black woman, and one where you have it's a Black man, but the same thing happened. So I think it's just the fact that they're Black. It just is what it is. Um, Dan said a way to take funds from Black people. Yeah, I mean, think about that. They couldn't even get what their home was worth. What would have happened? Like, what would you guys have done if you were in that situation? Just think about the fact that if they would have just taken that first appraisal and said, okay, we're going to go with this, and they didn't get a second opinion and change things in that house, we'll change things in the house and then get a second opinion, they would have been lowballed, dude. This is another way you keep Black people from generating wealth in this country. They lowballed them. That is absolutely ridiculous. Going to some of the comments in the chat. DC said, this is why reparations are so important. We must redistribute land, power, and resources. Absolutely. Do you see what is happening here, you guys? The real estate market in this country, when we talk about systemic racism, this is one of the tools, real estate. This is another way that they keep Black people from generating wealth. This is another way that they keep Black people from being in communities where the schools, where there are the best schools, the schools that are, have the most resources. This is another way they do that too, all through real estate, by preventing Black people from being able to buy homes in those communities, coming up with excuses. It's not for sale, even though it's advertised it is. Saying a house is under contract when it's not. It all ties together. Real estate. Jimmy Dore's Garage, we absolutely support reparations. Oh, who could you be talking about? For those who don't know, that's an inside joke. I guess it's not really that inside if you were on Twitter, but yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. 6JCD said, look into the fairly recent story from Marin County, California. A couple was initially lowballed as much as $500,000. Do you guys hear this? They were lowballed $500,000. That is insane. Do you know how much wealth that takes away from them? How much wealth they're prevented from having by doing that? Absolutely bad. Absolutely. And some people may make the argument that, well, you can always like prevent this by getting a Black realtor. Not necessarily. Not necessarily, boo. Because if they still working for the same company, they may do the same thing. So don't just assume that because you have a Black realtor that they're not going to do that to you. Oh man, you guys are a trip tonight. Deborah said, don't you pander to me right in my face at Jimmy Dore's Garage. Oh my God. Oh my God. Radical Leftist Agenda said, what if Candace Owens was your realtor? Oh, hey, there you go. That's a good example. That's a good example. Bomb Hills Not People said, that's more than the average retirement. Yeah, that's a lot of money. But $500,000 in California, I mean, because like last time I researched this, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but last time I researched this, a house in California that's like $800,000 isn't necessarily a luxurious house. Like you still like that's like I mean actually some places here depending on where you go, that's not a luxurious house either. So, but yeah, like so to be lowballed that way. Rayborn says it's the same type of thing when blacks were refused the GI Bill benefits like their education and home loan after they served. Absolutely. That was another thing that was done. Imagine serving in the United States military. One of the perks is you get the GI Bill, and then you go to war overseas or whatever. You come back home, and then you're like, okay, I have my bill, so I can go ahead and get the home loan and all of that stuff. And it's taken away from you, and you can't do it. Like that is another example of how they kept black people out, how they kept black people out of those communities. So when white people left the cities, and we had white flight, when all the white people left the cities and moved to the suburbs, and it was black people and Latino people like left in the city, all the money went with the white people that left. And so the schools in the cities started to suffer, like the resources went away because the schools are funded by property taxes. And all the schools that the white families went to, or the communities that the white families went to, those schools in those neighborhoods were very well resourced. But even black families that had the money to move into those neighborhoods, they were kept out. Don't Tell the House Slave says 11% of the military was black, yet only 3% of the GI Bill recipients were black. There you go. It's just another way to keep black people from getting things. Garrett said schools are funded by property taxes. Nordic model for education would eliminate both bad schools and property tax BS. Yeah. And I'm assuming by Nordic model, you're referring to the schools in like Norway and Finland, like those areas. Because I read something not too long ago that said that people that live in Finland are the happiest people in the world. Rick said, I wonder if this would apply to darker skinned Latinos or lighter skinned Latinos. I'm sure it does. That's a good question. And this is one of those things where I'd have to look into this too, because this would be worth like researching, like especially people who are immigrants, because another thing that could go against them is if you come to this country and you're trying to rent or you're trying to buy a house and you have a thick accent, or you can't speak English well. Some realtors can look down on that, and they shouldn't. It's ridiculous, but it's a reality in this country. Same thing if you're looking for a job. DC said if the California couple bought their house in the 90s or earlier, when they were likely just middle class or stable blue collar people who got in before too much gentrification. Absolutely. That was before all the gentrification. Yep. Matt said, as the lightest skinned Latino in the world, I definitely tell you it does matter. Colorism is real. Yes. Speaking of colorism, this is something that you could see. You know, my dad like served in not served, but my dad was stationed in Korea for like a year, and we couldn't go with them because they didn't have housing for the families, just for him. And my dad was saying how, like in Korea, he couldn't believe how many stores he would go into that would just have aisles of skin lightening, like the skin bleaching creams. He said is like unheard of because you don't see that here in this country. Like, yeah, they sell those products here, but not like aisles and aisles and aisles of them. Eric said, if I remember correctly, Finland has the #1 education system on the planet. I believe so. They are happy people. Telling you, they said they're the happiest. It was between like 1 year it was them and 1 year it was Iceland. Said they're the happiest people in the world. Iceland fought for a 4-day work week and they got it. General strike. Mm-hmm. Going to some of the comments in the chat. Yeah. Yeah. Real estate can be very. Thomas said, housing discrimination does affect Latinos who are more Black or Indigenous, especially if they have accents in their own cultures. So there you go. There you go. I'm going to show that image again because I want you guys, if you came in later, I want you to see this. And this is what we were talking about earlier on. This is very important. People of color are more likely to experience discrimination when trying to rent or buy housing. The likelihood of experiencing racial discrimination when trying to rent or buy housing by race or ethnicity. This goes back to 2017. White people were at 5%. 5% of white people experience discrimination with housing. African Americans, 45% of African Americans experience housing discrimination. They're the largest. We're the largest in this poll, in this graph. Asian Americans 25%, Latino 31%, Native Americans 17%. And what is interesting about this is I want you to keep in mind because you'll see that number, that 45%, but Black people were only like 13% of the population. We're only 13% of the population. Isn't that crazy? But we experience the most housing discrimination in this country. 45%. That is absolutely ridiculous. And again, this is from the Harvard Chan School of Public Health. That's where the source comes from. Going to some of the comments in the chat. Philip said Sweden is currently closing prisons. Though? Really? I have to look into that, Philip. I didn't know that. I did not know that one. Absolutely. This is funny. Some of these comments are funny. Yep. Close the prisons. DC brought up an interesting point. He said discriminated whites were probably mostly Arab immigrants. Some of them go by off white. That's an interesting point. I didn't think about that. So that is something to take into consideration with that poll that I just showed you. Hi, Harrison. Narissa said, I'm dyeing my hair blonde and heading to Finland. What? Telling you, they're the happiest people, man. They're the happiest people. James said they aren't closing all of them. They are closing 4 of them. They have a decline in prison population, but not a huge drop in crime, although their crime rates are low. That is interesting. I know they don't have the level of gun violence that we do. Like for sure. For sure. But yeah, that video, it's absolutely heartbreaking. Like no one should have to go through that. Like when trying to buy a house, when you're trying to rent, when you're trying to sell, like this shouldn't even be an issue, but it is in this country. And these are just some of the things that Black people face when dealing with real estate in this country. Oh shoot, I forgot to tweet my thing out. Hold on, guys. I hope my tweet don't delete. Okay. I'm going live again at 7:00, you guys. I'll be on my channel and these punks, hold on. We're going to be talking about, oh my God, all this drama. Here, I'm going to put it up on here. I'm going to share my screen. I think this is like the first time someone didn't try to call me while I was live. Let's see. Let me cross my fingers because, that could still happen. How are you guys doing this Friday night? I have chicken nuggets that I'm going to eat for dinner. That's where I'm at right now. That is where I am at. I didn't really have time to cook, so I am going to have chicken nuggies. Chicken nuggies. All right. Let me share my screen. This is what's going on at 7. I'm going to try to eat these little nuggets beforehand. There's no audio to share, obviously. This is what I'm talking about tonight at 7 o'clock. I'll be live with Steve. He's from Real Progressives. JB from Hampton Leftists, of course. Rob Buchner, who is actually a newer left YouTuber. Some of you guys may have seen his videos already. Like he does pretty good stuff. And we're going to be discussing what the left, elections, activism, and podcasts, and what we can do moving forward. So we're going to talk about our opinions about elections, whether we should continue with this. I mean, I already told you guys how I feel about electoral politics. We're going to talk about activism, direct action. That's the way I see myself going. And we're also going to talk about the podcast, like people, blaming us, those of us newbies on the left for, I guess, not getting behind the squad anymore and stuff like that. And what we're going to try to do at the end of this conversation is come to some sort of solutions and go from there. So pretty cool lineup. We got Rob, we got JB, and we got Steve. So that should be fun and it'll be interesting. I'm excited to hear their takes and their opinions. Going to some of the comments in the chat. Hi, Lawrence. Lawrence, come back and join me at 7. I'll be on my channel, though. Jimmy Doors Garage said, is the podcast going to be about reparation? You know what, Jimmy Doors Garage, you are a trip. You are a trip. You guys are really, man, y'all are really coming down on David said, just saw Jay and Affinity on Franco. That was a great show. Translating ideas into action was basically the last 20 minutes. Yeah, absolutely. I saw that too, like right before I hopped on. Absolutely. I mean, like I back like Jay and Affinity, and I agree exactly with what they were saying. Like some of us don't have time to like wait for people to get elected, but I'll talk about that later on tonight. I'll go into more detail about that. Paul said Denmark is apparently the happiest country in the world. I can see that too. Denmark's pretty cool. Everybody riding around on bikes. Just looking at the comments here. Derek said direct action, stop line 3, support water protectors. Yeah, I'm all about direct action, you guys. Narissa said, I don't know the answers, but I'm scared for this country. Thanks for the conversation. Yeah, we're going to talk about all that tonight because, the back and forth, like, especially like on Twitter, it's just social media in general, that's not really getting us anywhere. But at the same time, I do want to make sure that everyone's like voice is heard. We may not agree on everything, but at some point we have to come up with some type of solutions and prevent this tit for tat thing that's going on. Ultraviolet said, Sabby, I'm so sorry for the terrible experiences you've had with renting. No one should have to deal with this crap. This isn't quite the same, but my partner and I moved in together in Texas. We ended up houseless for 3+ months after applying and being denied for all 15+ houses we applied for. We got our applications in first, did everything right. I thought maybe it was due to my very non-American immigrant last name. I eventually got fed up and straight up asked an agent why we were denied. She told me it was because I was disabled. Isn't that a shame? The way the other are treated in this country is absolutely appalling. That's terrible. That's terrible. Like, I feel like that's illegal. Like, like seriously, like, how can you deny someone because they're disabled? It's really messed up. Leslie, what's going on? The content that FHL presents is needed. Oh, thank you so much. We try our best. We try to do a good job. David brought up a good point. Another reason why home ownership is so important. Yeah. One of the things I know that bothered me, like when I was renting, and I rented for a long time, a long time, is that it was just like the things you can do and the things you can't do. Um, the fact that they can reject you, the fact that like it's not yours because you don't own it. They can raise the rent. Like in Boston, they can raise the rent as high as they want. We don't have rent stability and we don't have rent control. So I've seen people get priced out of apartments. It happens. COVID kind of slowed that down, but once all the students come back September, it's going to go right back to it's just ridiculous. Jimmy Dore's Garage said, if all else fails, you can always build a home. And you know what? You should watch Hair of the Dog on FHL. They actually did a series where they talk about like building your own house. Which I think everybody should. We need to like look at these things. We need to look at building your own home. We need to look at growing our own food. Like these things are especially important. That way, we're not depending on the system. We're not depending on the people that have the power and can tell us to peace out. Ramsey said, darker your skin in India and mostly Asian countries, the lower your class is. That's sad. I mean, that's really sad. By the way, that picture, Ramsey, that you have, I actually had to do a photography project and I used that picture or similar. Actually, he was facing a different way, but I know that picture. It's really interesting. Narissa said 3D printed homes are the future. What? Or tiny homes, you guys, tiny homes. More and more tiny home communities are being built. I should do a special about that, like just about tiny homes. Awesome. Well, it is 6:29. I'm not going to keep you guys much longer because I got to go eat my little chicken nuggets and get ready for my 7 o'clock show. And that is my chill session, even though I tend to get louder in that session. I don't know why. It's something about the 7 p.m. time on a Friday, and I don't have to go to work the next day. Maybe that's it. I'll be having a beer. Started doing that last Friday. Figured like it's Friday. Why not? Why not? Yeah. So definitely come join me at 7 o'clock on my channel on Sabby Sabs. And we're gonna figure this out, man. We're gonna sort this out. We are gonna come up with some type of solutions in this piece. That is what we are going to do. And we're going to find a way to come together instead of all this like attack mode, Mortal Kombat. This is what we're going to be talking about for those of you who came in later. I'll be talking about what the left, elections, activisms, and podcasts. We are going to break all three of these down and we're going to come up with some type of solutions. Rob Buchner will be there. JB from FHL will be there. And also Steve from Real Progressives. So join me at 7. I'm going to peace out now because it is time for my chicken nuggets. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And as always, have a good night and keep up the fight.